to get started. Thanks again for joining us today, everyone, on this session about Uzbekistan as a strategic hub for critical raw materials, investment opportunities across the value chain. As you probably all know, and you probably saw from the president's speech yesterday, critical minerals are a hot topic right now around the world. They sit kind of at the intersection of geopolitics and business, governments, and private sector. Global demand for critical minerals is surging, of course, because of their essential role in advanced technologies, everything from renewable energy to electric vehicles and batteries and all kinds of other systems that we'll be depending on for the future. As countries seek to reduce their dependence on a few dominant suppliers, won't name names, Central Asia and Uzbekistan in particular can play a role in diversifying these mineral resources. And I think we need to think here not just about mining or exploration and mining, but processing and really getting the whole full value chain here to make Central Asia and Uzbekistan specifically a hub for world supply of critical minerals. So realizing that this potential requires addressing various challenges, such as attracting capital investment, infrastructure development, regulatory frameworks, and environmental sustainability, I think we have quite a bit that we can discuss today. So, joining me on the panel, we have Omanolo Nasruddin Khodjayev, who is the first Deputy Minister of Mining and Geology of the Republic of Uzbekistan. Ilhan Han, Han Ilhan, sorry, who is the advisor to the chairman of TMK. And a little bit further down, we have Paul Moffat from the EBRD, Associate Director and Senior Counsel for Legal Transition. And Steve Powell, who's Managing Director of Sino Powell Capital and Stevo Energy LLC. And to get us started, I will pass the word over to the First Deputy Minister.
Thank you, uh, John. Good afternoon, dear colleagues, dear guests. It's a fascinating panel, fascinating subject. As you rightly pointed out, it's a hot issue right now. And I believe Uzbekistan is we all believe, and the president has made explicit in his speech yesterday that Uzbekistan has all necessary foundations in place to become a very important player in this area, in this field. And the policy, the strategy we're pursuing is to to combine Uzbekistan's natural endowments in that area with uh, recently adopted and new measures to be adopted aimed at supporting the development of this sector. I was speaking about Uzbekistan's value proposition the other day, and I believe our value proposition is very strong. So what we offer is uh, very strong natural endowments, as I said. So we are with only about third of Uzbekistan's territory geologically explored, and um, we are amongst top five in gold and among top 10 in a number of other minerals like copper or uranium. President has stated in his speech yesterday about $3 trillion worth of mineral in our earth. So that's a lot of a lot of projects that can be done using those natural endowments. I believe our legislative base, thanks to our support from our colleagues from EBRD, our legislative base is has been uh, strengthened very substantially with adoption of new law on subsoil. So this is a very modern law. I'm sure a colleague from EBRD would be speaking about it, but it sets very clear rules of the game for market participants, and it's very modern law, as I said. Taxation wise, uh, we are um, very competitive with all our peers. And yesterday's initiative that the president has declared about um special mining rights tax that would be refunded to companies for the next 10 years is going to make our position even more competitive. Last but not least, we have a strong mining culture, which was developing for many years. So we operate very mature, very well-established assets amongst the largest in the world. So before I conclude, I'd like to say a few words, and then I guess I will pass it to Mr. Ilhan about TMK. So we position TMK as a platform for potential investment. All right. So we are not uh, trying to raise financing for projects. So we are looking for partners. Mr. Ilkan will be talking about this more in detail, but the portfolio includes about 80 projects, 80, 80 projects um, in excess of $2 billion investment. But key strategy is to to generate as much value as possible domestically through partnerships. So their operational model is partnerships, and we believe this is the right model for our market and for those conditions that we operate. So with that, I guess I will pass it over to you then. Right? Sorry, John, if I overstep.
No, no, no,
Yeah.
that's fine. You get as much time as you want.
Thank you very much, Deputy Minister. Very privileged to be here to talking about something that's quite important globally. But what I would like to present to you today is an incredible vision of the president of Uzbekistan that he outlined yesterday. Uh, I've been in this business for 40 years, and quite honestly, this type of a vision and the opportunity to be a part of this vision is a privilege. Uh, as as the Deputy Minister Monolabe presented, this vision is the president's vision of doing something about the supply side of the critical raw materials. So our objective is very clear. We want to establish Uzbekistan through TMK as a viable alternative in critical raw material supply to the dominant forces that are controlling the market today. I think since you're in this room, I'm going to assume the challenges of the critical raw materials. Advanced economies, where the manufacturing industry is the driver, needs critical raw materials. I think if you read the amount of studies that has been done on the demand side, and there is enormous amount of studies, which concludes the same thing: not enough critical raw materials, and the critical raw materials that they acquire is a single source. That's exposure. And that exposure actually is now being felt in the advanced economies. So if we look at the importance of this and what needs to be done, obviously we need to act now. And TMK, as you can see, is not a theory on paper. We're operational on the critical raw materials, and we want to expand that. If we look at some of the stakeholders in critical raw materials, the government engagement in critical raw materials actually, in my opinion, is a paradigm shift in the mining industry. Prior to that, our government interaction has been at the permitting level. But when you come to critical raw materials, MOUs are being signed at the state level with different and multiple countries like US, EU, Germany, France. So Uzbekistan has MOUs with all of these countries. But if we look at the capital markets, so publicly listed critical raw material companies that have one or two assets, they're still under heavy discount and the multipliers are extremely low. So raising capital in the capital market seems to be not a viable. If we look at the end users that are actually going to need these critical raw materials, they have noticed that they have to do something and perhaps secure their global supply chain, but the actions seem to be a bit fragmented. Private equity and the private bank, they haven't really changed their investment criteria for critical raw materials. It's still de-risk the projects as much as possible, come to us, and then we'll evaluate whether we can provide capital or not. The sovereign funds, like the governments, they're actively involved in critical raw materials. Hedge funds are not even in the game at this stage. TMK, in addition to the assets portfolio that Deputy Minister has mentioned to you, operates in a full value chain. On the upstream, mining operations. On the midstream, we generate metal from the product that comes from the upstream operations. And on the downstream, we manufacture end products from the metal that has been produced at the midstream. I want to emphasize, we are operational. We have 1,500 people. If you look at the existing operations in a snapshot, on the upstream side, we have tungsten mining operations, and that tungsten concentrate comes to our midstream facilities. In addition to the tungsten, we have byproducts that are coming from Almalik's copper operations, such as moly, rhenium, selenium, and tellurium. And from all of those metals and the derivatives on the midstream, we produce end products on the downstream. So again, TMK is an operational company on the full value chain in critical raw materials. Our future, our asset portfolio. We have 17 projects at the development phase. In critical raw materials, if you go into the details of the projects, you will notice that the projects are by and large metallurgy driven. In fact, the material science sometimes overshadows the mining side. The R&D associated with this is incredibly important. So TMK has a strong R&D facility and team that is looking at 44 projects. What does this mean? Well, the recovery of these critical raw materials sometimes needs further research and development, innovative approach, partnership to improve recoveries. Equally, on the hydrometallurgy and pyrometallurgy, the important thing is to increase the quality as well as the quantity of the metal that is produced. So R&D is extremely important in the critical raw materials. What I will tell you is that these 44 projects, as they prove positive results through R&D, they will become projects, will add to that 17 that is currently identified. Behind that, on the exploration, we have exploration activities ongoing, and then we also have some prospects. Now, I don't like to use the word greenfield in Uzbekistan because greenfield indicates that there is no exploration drilling. Actually, in Uzbekistan, there has been excessive amount of drilling, which is continuing, but perhaps the results of those drillings are not in accordance with international standards, but they were in accordance with another standard. So it just needs to be converted into international standards. And I don't believe personally that there's going to be a material change in the conclusion of resources or reserves. I'd like to pause here for a second. So TMK, with an asset base of approaching 80 different projects that focus on 25 different commodities, that is operational in the full value chain. And I'd like to take a pause and think about, is there an alternative to TMK? And if you put the dominant forces that provide to the critical raw materials, it's unmatched. It doesn't exist anywhere else with this asset base that operates in the full value chain in the critical raw materials. The vision has been described. We want to be a viable alternative that, as the industry is moving towards certification, to be a certified viable global supplier or an alternative global supplier. But in our mission, there are some critical elements that we are going to be focused on. As the deputy minister indicated, our main focus is not capital. We're fully funded. We're looking for partnership. And I'd like to talk a little bit about that partnership because we use that word very liberally. And I believe it means different things to different individuals. We want to continue operating on the full value chain because as we go from upstream to downstream, the high volume of the product and the low value of it changes. In the midstream, it will become low volume and high value, and that in itself is further value enhancement when you come to the downstream. We are fully going to be doing our activities in accordance with international standards and with a high degree of sensitivity to ESG. Why are we doing that? Because it's the right thing to do. However, that's also going to provide us a positive differentiator when the industry moves towards certification. We want to generate additional hubs on the midstream, which I will talk a little bit about, which will basically allow us to enhance the production of these critical raw material metals. The end users. We want to reach out to the end users. In the mining industry, usually the off-takers are the buyers of the product. We want to have a relationship and partnership directly with the end users. Our hub concept. These 80 different assets is obviously located where the geology is. We cannot move their location. But on the midstream, strategically, we plan to locate 2 to 4 midstream facilities where the concentrate is going to be coming to generate metal. I'd like you to think about this like a factory, where in the midstream you have different lines of production side by side. One line could be tungsten concentrate comes and the tungsten metal comes out. Similarly, right next to it, you could have molybdenum and graphite. But the other idea and implementation we're going to have is these midstream facilities are going to be located in special economic zones that is called technoparks, like our president has mentioned yesterday. The purpose of the technoparks is to focus on the downstream side of the critical raw materials and attract international, but as well as domestic manufacturing industries that will not only have a secure supply of the metal that they need in their manufacturing, but also be able to invest in a heavily incentivized zone. And we want to have this as an attraction or an optionality to the end users. As you can see, our approach to executing the TMK's vision allows for partnerships in different levels and different forms. These hubs are not only for the purpose of the resources in Uzbekistan. As these hubs are established, they're also of value for the regional players where perhaps they don't have midstream facility, but we can receive the concentrate and turn that into metal with certain partnerships. Our objectives. Obviously, we want to capture the full value as we're operating right now throughout the value chain, we want to capture the highest value. The hub concept, if you analyze the dominant forces that are providing, it's sometimes not necessarily the amount of critical raw materials they have, but the amount of processing facilities they have. So our approach is we need to focus on the processing side, which is where the hub concept comes in. And obviously, like I said, this hub concept also provides an additional value to the regional players in critical raw materials. We want to attract the end users through our technopark concept. The end users is actually the ones that are really exposed to these critical raw material supply chains. So we not only offer them a secure supply of this metal, but we provide them an optionality of investing in a zone that is heavily incentivized for investments. As I mentioned, as we move forward, all of our activities are going to be in accordance with international standards. The ESG is very important for us. In the future, obviously, as we grow, we need to walk before we run, but we want to have well established ESG principles to provide us alternatives for future capital deployment through hubs or the capital markets. We realize that the human capacity is limited. So there is a heavy focus on enhancing our human resources capacity and capability. And what are we doing about that? We're constantly in contact with international universities and exploring ideas where we can work together to contribute to this initiative of enhancing human resource capacity and capability. Partnership. Our idea of partnership is different than a transactional agreement. Metal for or money for metal, in my mind, is not a partnership, but is a transactional agreement. A partnership for us is 2 plus 2 needs to equal 22. So we have an incredible resource base in Uzbekistan that is, other than the dominant forces, we believe is unmatched. We're operating in the full value chain where the partnerships could be along any part of that value chain. But we're looking for long-term partnership where there will be a win-win scenario where 2 plus 2 equals 22. As our deputy minister clearly indicated, our main focus is not capital. Our main focus is a long and principally aligned partnership that most likely will accelerate the providing these products to the global supply chain. I like to summarize in the importance of critical raw materials that have been dictated and established by the governments. Let's take a moment and why are these critical? Who said that they should be critical? Well, the governments have recognized in advanced economies that the manufacturing industry, that is the driver of the economy, is extremely exposed. Well, the asset base that we have, our project portfolio, and the full value chain operations, in our opinion, is a strong positive differentiator. The government support that we work very closely with the ministry. Our strategies are developed together. But in addition to that, it is recognized that the vision obviously needs capital to be able to appropriately execute. We have $200 million allocated from the Uzbek Reconstruction Fund for our operations. So we're funded. And that amount is actually a catalyst for a future partnership in different levels. Again, I want to emphasize we're actively searching partners. Our principle is a long partnership where 2 + 2 = 22. Thank you.
Thank you, Han. That was a great presentation, and I'm sure we'll have lots of questions for you a little bit later on. But right now, I'd like to pass the word over to Paul Moffat from the EBRD. Paul, you've been working with the government, as the Deputy Minister mentioned earlier, on the legal framework for the mining industry in Uzbekistan. What kind of effect do those kind of foundational aspects play in the effort to attract more investment for the mining sector?
Yeah, John, thanks very much, and good afternoon, all. I'm delighted to be here today to participate in this discussion on how Uzbekistan secures its place in the critical minerals value chain. And to do that, I'll say a little bit about the work that EBRD has been undertaking with the government, predominantly with the Ministry of Mining Industry and Geology. And that work has been focused on some of the more upstream uh, foundational aspects of policy, of laws, of governance, and particularly of regulation. So, as John has mentioned, I work for the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, EBRD, based in London, and I lead the bank's technical assistance work in the countries that it operates in. And traditionally, that work aims at helping governments to improve the investment climate for investment into critical minerals as a means of attracting further and better quality investment to develop the sector. EBRD it's a multilateral development bank, as you likely know, and we invest across economic sectors. 70% of our business is with the private sector, and mining is an important part of our business portfolio. Uzbekistan is an important country for us, and critical minerals is an equally important area of focus for us presently. I mean, as a lender and as an investor, we're keen to do business in this area. We have small projects here in the sector in Uzbekistan, but they're small compared to the capacity of the sector, the need of the sector for investment, and our capability to do more. And I think we'd very much like to do more, but for us to do that, we need serious investors, well funded, with a long-term view, willing to take on the risks that exploration and mining projects represent at the moment. And as you may know, those investors are a little bit thin on the ground, and historically there's been little investment into this area in Uzbekistan. So I think that the legal and policy and regulatory area is something that really needs to be focused upon. Some of these fundamental issues need to be gotten right. I think if there is to be any realistic chance of attracting the investors, the partners that are looked for into not just the upstream, but also midstream and also downstream. So looking at this reluctance to invest and knowing that there's bankable projects in the mining sector don't appear by themselves, we stepped in upstream, I think at the pre-transactional level, to work with the ministry to identify what were the reasons behind this reluctance to look at Uzbekistan as a serious place to do business. And to do that, we spoke to investors, investors both already active in the sector here, and also those that were contemplating coming or would like to look at Uzbekistan as a place to invest. And what we quickly discovered was that there was little confidence in the more centralized and state-dominated approach that has been characteristic of regulation and governance up till recently here, and there was a feeling that it was ill-suited to, the sort of dynamic and well-funded and globally competitive critical minerals sector that the government and that the president has set its sights on. So we some of the specific concerns that we heard about were I think, vague and overlapping laws and regulations, difficulty in accessing the market in terms of getting licenses, I suppose difficulty in accessing geological data, maybe too much discretion in terms of licensing and enforcement of those licenses. And I think overall some of the fear was too many opportunities for the government to intervene and impose its decisions on operations. So understanding those concerns, we then set about trying to address them with the ministry. To do that, we looked to tried and tested and proven best practice of governance and regulation across the globe, and aspects that were realistic for adoption here in Uzbekistan, and we're aiming to adopt measures that were familiar, consistent, and that investors that are interested and that the government wishes to attract would be familiar and would be comfortable with when they see them. So we managed to agree a set of next steps with the government in terms of policy reforms, and they are designed to shift from this Soviet-influenced command type of approach to much more modern, market-focused approach that has a keen eye on the economics of the project and what today's investors need to see. Having agreed those policy reforms with the government, we were then able to step in and help to prepare a pretty comprehensive and far-reaching new mining law, the 2025 subsoil law, which we're delighted was approved by Parliament, signed by the President, pretty much in the form that we had recommended it to the government. And that law has come into effect earlier this year in February, and that I think sets the scene, puts in a framework that should start to attract attention, and lays the groundwork for a more stable, more familiar, more predictable type of environment, and move regulation and governance more in harmony with what's expected from the international private investor perspective. Now, we're not naive, and we don't believe that any number of shiny new laws or promises from governments to change the way that they do things is going to be in themselves convincing. And that I think effective implementation of these new measures is critical. Proof of the pudding is in the eating, so to speak. So it's I think with that in mind, later this month or perhaps earlier next month, we will begin the next stage of our support for the Ministry of Mining, and that support looks at practical implementation steps. So in addition to putting the meat on the concepts that are in the new law, we'll also look at piloting and kind of proving and demonstrating the practical impact of the new law. And we will do that by identifying specific mineral deposits that we will help the ministry to bring to market by trialing the new licensing regime that the government has put in place. And I think by doing that, EBRD is focusing on practical steps that we can take, that the government can take, to demonstrate that it is serious about implementing a new environment and a much more positive environment for investment. I think with that, I'll hand back to John, and I think with an eye on the clock, I'll hand back. But hopefully, I've given some food for thought, and maybe prompted one or two of you today to think more about taking a new look at Uzbekistan for a potential destination for investment. Thank you, John.
Thank you, Paul. I think that's great because we kind of set the stage. We know we have the resources, as Hannes talked about. As Paul just mentioned, we have the legal framework. I'm going to address Steve down at the end here next, because Steve's company, I don't know if you know about Sinopel Capital, but they've raised I think about over $20 billion for projects around the world in like 30 countries, something like that. And also Steve's family has like a century-long history in the mining industry. So I'm curious to get well, your family, but I'm curious to get your thoughts. What is needed for Uzbekistan to be that strategic hub, and it's a very capital intensive uh, idea as well. What can they do to raise the capital for
You want me to talk about myself? Is that it?
that?
That's my favorite
You can do a
subject.
little of
So,
that too.
first of all, I got started in my career in the broadcasting industry. I was the founder of HBO Sports and programming chief at ESPN. So I produced lots of sports events, and sometimes I was actually in front of the camera. Later on, I owned a group of radio stations, and I was told many times that I had the perfect face for radio. So um, I later got into investment banking, into mining. And the reason I got into mining is because my family goes way back in that industry. My grandfather, my father's father, was born in the year 1887 on a farm in Illinois. And he got a job in the early 1900s at Alcoa, the aluminum company of America. And his first job was to go to South America and sell aluminum pots and pans on horseback from village to village. He did that. He later came back to Pittsburgh, where Alcoa is headquartered, and he wanted to start his own business. He had a sense of adventure. He believed in aluminum, although some people thought it was poisonous back then. He moved to Montreal, Canada in 1923 and started a company that became known as Alcan, the aluminum company of Canada. It ended up being bigger than Alcoa. He ran that company for 30 years. When he retired, he became chancellor of McGill University in Montreal. My uncle, who'd spent his entire career at Alcan, became chairman and CEO. And my brother-in-law spent his entire career there and just retired recently. So we go way, way back. When you said I had a century's history, he didn't mean me personally, but my family goes way back in that industry. And some of the lessons I learned from my family in that industry, I think might resonate with you. It's a tough business. You get your hands dirty. You don't always hit a home run. You have to be very patient, waiting for the ore to come up and prove to be worth excavating. Then you have to sell it. It's a long, long process. When I was on Wall Street, after I left the entertainment business, I decided to start my own firm and focus on mining because we had the family background. So I started this company in 1999. Our first big deal was with a company in a city, in a country that I won't name. You can guess what it is. They bought iron ore from us, from our mine in South Africa. And something that happened was that there was no logistics to get the iron ore from the mine to the port, which was in Mozambique. So without logistics, the ore might as well stay in the ground. We bought rolling stock, locomotives, and wagons, and railed our own ore to the port. That's how we integrated. If we didn't do that, there would be no ore to go to Maputo in Mozambique. Another thing we did later on, we owned a mine in Brazil. It was a manganese mine. We sold that manganese to that same country. I won't name I won't name them by name, but it was China. And we needed to build a railroad line from the mine. It was in the rainforest to the port. So we built a railroad line to get our ore to the port. We vertically integrated. We cut out any middleman and we shipped our own ore to China. So those lessons like that have gone a long way in what we currently do. We had another project in Mongolia. There was a large mine that needed power in the Gobi Desert. There are no power lines in the Gobi Desert. We built a power plant, burning coal, excuse me, so they could take ore out of the ground. So we vertically integrated. And I think that's a lesson to be learned when you want to do a project. You want to integrate. I think it's what Han was saying a little bit, that you want to integrate, take out some of the middlemen, and have more control over what you're doing. So I think what we've learned over the years, we now have a large staff of people doing projects, not just in mining, but in infrastructure and also in energy. We built 6 renewable projects in Mexico, and that energy is largely used by mining companies. So then again, we've integrated and build energy projects to support the mining industry. So what we've learned is you need to integrate. You need to know who your end users are, who your vendors are. You need to become friendly with these people. They need to like you and trust you. Without that, you're not going to sell anything. So on this panel, for example, two of these people live in Washington, D.C., where I live, just a few blocks from where I live. This gentleman right here, just looking at his cell phone, we discovered that we both went to the same graduate school. So we have that connection. As a matter of fact, give that to him. I have a little gift for him. Do you want to open it up and show them what it is? You know what it is, don't you? It's a coffee mug from the school we went to together. Not at the same time. He's much older than I am. But we now have that bond. We will always have that bond that we both went to Harvard Business School. And that goes a long way in this world. I can trust him. I know how he thinks most of the time. These gentlemen live in Boston. Ham and I have so many connections. That goes a long way in any industry, and especially in mining, where you have to have patience and you have to have trust and respect for the people you work with. One final thing, when my grandfather founded Alcan, my uncle later ran it. It was sold about almost 20 years ago to Rio Tinto for $38 billion. That was a lot of money back then. It's a lot of money today. Unfortunately, it was a public company at that point, so we didn't put the money in our pockets. We had some shares, but my grandfather never talked about how much money he made in that industry. He talked about the people that he gave jobs to. He talked about the aluminum that was used during World War II to make lightweight airplanes that helped win the war. He was about to be knighted by Queen Elizabeth until she found out that he was still an American citizen. He never became a Canadian, so he's never knighted. But he never focused on making money. He knew the money would come if he worked hard and did a good job and provided a good service. It was always about getting the deal done and helping people with their careers and providing a service and a product that was useful. And that's what we do. I mean, sure, everybody likes to make money, but we're in Uzbekistan for more than just that. We want to help this country develop. We want their people to get good, decent jobs and build this country up. That's why we're here. I think that's why most of you are probably here too. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. I think, yeah, there's a lot of lessons in there. Most importantly, I think, is that we want to talk about vertical integration. We want to have the full value chain. We want to have strong partnerships, and I think that's very much what our other speakers were talking about as well. I think we have about 15 minutes left, so I had a couple of questions of my own, but I'll skip those and let's go straight to the audience. Do we have a microphone? There we go. So if there are any questions from the audience for our distinguished panel, let's go ahead and ask them now. Please present yourself and then ask your question. Yeah.
Hi there, Ross Alistair, Peel Hunt. Question for Han. Obviously, with such a large portfolio of projects that will be probably developed at different stages, would you consider investing in different jurisdictions in order to secure supply of metals for the midstream and the downstream? If it was to give you the partnerships that you talked about that can help you with other projects?
I'm sorry, I had a little bit of difficult time hearing you, but it was the question whether TMK would invest in other jurisdictions?
Yes, exactly. If there's an angle to help you with either supply of product for the midstream or to help with partnerships.
I'll give you my view, but I think Deputy Minister would also have his view. As a business person, I think what we need to focus on is what's in front of us, and what is in front of us is incredibly diverse projects with different commodities, and I would propose that if we dilute that focus with looking outside of Uzbekistan, we may lose what is in front of us. But having said that, opportunities that come our way will obviously evaluate it.
Thank you.
Y-
Actually, can I
well,
will jump in. Oh, I'm sorry.
sure.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I just wanted to say that I fully subscribe to what my colleague just said. A primary goal is to explore and develop natural resources of Uzbekistan. But at the same time, as we've mentioned a few times, um, our primary objective or ultimate goal is to create value chains, sustainable value chains. So, and if at some point we see that establishing those value chains requires investment in other jurisdictions, we can look at it on a case by case basis. But it's not what we strategically actually, envisage. All right.
Thank you, Deputy Minister. I just wanted to jump in because this reminded me of a question I had, and I'm going to actually jump in and pose it before we go to the next audience question. This is mainly, I guess, for you, Han. Um, we see in a certain neighboring country to the north, we've seen Towson Samruk partnering up with some international mining companies on the exploration side, usually on a project level. And I was curious how you saw partnerships in terms of helping to explore and develop and mine some of TNK's licensed assets.
Look, I mean, we obviously recognize there's for the need for the critical raw materials, the end users and the governments have alternatives to TMK. We recognize that. And our value proposition is very clear. And if there is an alternative to that, there's an alternative to that. And I don't think this industry in the critical raw materials needs to be competitive because the need for the critical raw materials is quite high, and a demand needs to be there. But again, I would propose to you that the TMK's positive differentiators is it's state-owned, which is basically fully supported by the initiative of the president, 70 assets or 80 assets, focused on 25 different commodities, operating in full value chain upstream, midstream, and downstream. But obviously, if there's an alternative to that, there is an alternative to that. But I think currently, I don't really see that.
Right. No, but I'm just saying. So, for example, you have an exploration license that you have prioritized. Obviously, there's a certain amount of capital and expertise that's needed to do that. Would you bring in a partner for a joint venture on that, or would
Oh,
you look to
yeah.
uh,
So,
how would you structure that
yeah.
kind of partnership?
So our partnerships, first of all, I believe we don't have any restrictive criteria in our partnerships. We're open to any type of a value proposition for partnerships in throughout the value chain of our operations, starting from exploration all the way to the end product. So, um, look, I would say this very honestly. As most of you have traveled around many countries, but in Uzbekistan, what I'm seeing is a genuine interest in partnership, and it's a genuine interest. Like it was clearly indicated by our deputy minister. The capital is not what we're after. We're after a strong partnership in this initiative, which is one of the most important elements in the global economy and global world for supplying these critical raw materials to the advanced economies. So, no restrictions on listening to value propositions for partnerships. We have ideas that we'd like to share too. And the important thing for us is to open a dialogue so that we can discuss these partnerships.
So could I jump in and say something? As far as going into other jurisdictions, think about the infrastructure. This country is landlocked. You have to go into other jurisdictions if you want to get the ore out of this country. So you're going to have to, by definition, deal with other jurisdictions.
Well, I just want to add to that, Steve. Yes, it is landlocked, but as we go through the value chain, high volume decreases to low volume. I mean, simply imagine a molybdenum concentrate that needs to be transported with wagons. But if that molybdenum goes through the midstream facility, that molybdenum brick is not much bigger than this. So the challenges of logistics are marginalized, in my opinion.
Good. All right. Can we get another question from the audience? Anyone? Wow, it's very very quiet. I guess I'll throw another one out then to our panel. Paul, I'm curious. So you've you described earlier how you've been working on the legal framework. How do you think what is in place now compares with some of the other markets that might be competing for the similar pools of capital?
I think we see the the change in regime as pretty significant. I think because the timing, I think as Becca said, the country has had a lot of time to see what's worked or what hasn't worked in other jurisdictions, and I suppose identify the best of regulation and best of governance to adopt here. So I think it's pretty comprehensive. It's probably one of the more forward-looking pieces of legislation in the region, if not beyond. And it's designed, I think, having spoken to those that are interested in investing in Uzbekistan, addressing their concerns, we've consulted along the process. So it's designed to target those concerns and adopt familiar concepts, familiar practices in place elsewhere to investors.
And I'd like to follow up with that with the deputy minister, if you don't mind. Okay, you've got this now, this framework in place. What is next in terms of the ministry's plans for building on that, for kind of pushing the ball forward in terms of attracting investment?
Our first priority that we are working on now, actually with, again, EBRD support. I'm not sure if you mentioned it. You mentioned it, right? So we are kicking off another project, which is in July. In fact, it is already going, right? But in July would be sort of an official start, which would be aiming at operationalization of this law. So every law, as you understand, requires development of large number of sub-law documentation, regulations, etc., including changes into existing regulations and procedures. So this is a big project that we would be working on for at least, I believe, the end of this year. And what I also wanted to mention is that there are a number of digitalization initiatives that are being worked on with partners, international partners, aiming at building, transparent digital geology of Uzbekistan. So digitalizing geological data which is available, digitalizing process of applying and issuing licenses to entrepreneurs, etc. So there will be lots of new services made available to entrepreneurs during this year, and all of it would be then supported by our newly adopted legislation. So this is a big chunk of work that we are pursuing, and very grateful to EBRD and our other partners for the support.
But I'll just build on that a little bit if I can, John. The work that we'll start, or we've just started our third phase of work with the ministry. I mean, it aims to to prove that Uzbekistan is an attractive place for doing business. That things have changed. I mean, we say things have changed. The government say things have changed. There are opportunities on offer, but this next phase of work is about proving that that's actually the case. by piloting the law and bringing actual deposits to market, promoting it, overhauling the licensing regime, and then piloting licensing processes to demonstrate that the government's serious about this, and follow through to make it happen. And then just on the other aspect that the deputy minister has mentioned, we think that digitization and greater accessibility to geodata is a critical aspect in attracting attention, in reducing, in removing risk, in terms of targeting investments on the right type of deposits. And this work is ongoing in countries across the world. It's proven its way. It's proven return on investment for the digitization process. I mean, we've carried out a study on the value for money in terms of return on dollar of investment into digitization. And the results, if you look at some of the more developed and some of the more advanced jurisdictions, it's just phenomenal, up into the thousands of dollars per dollar, both in terms of directly investment into the mining sector, but also more broadly through the economy in terms of jobs, in terms of taxation revenue. So we think that is another critical area that the government can follow through on, and that's somewhere that we will also look to help the government on.
Great, thank you. I think we're just about out of time. We have a couple minutes left. I'll give you one more chance for an audience question. And if there are none, then I guess we'll go ahead and wrap this up. I'd like to thank everyone on the panel for your participation today, and for a great discussion. And we'll all be moving forward to help develop not only TMK, but all of the critical minerals deposits in Uzbekistan, and see how this strategic hub for critical minerals and critical raw materials develops over the next few years.
If I could just add, we have a booth here, so if the discussions we had are interesting to you, it's important to your business, please come to our booth and we can explore ideas, partnerships in more detail.
Great. Thank you very much.